My ladies and gentlemen, my name is Giorgio Cosetti. I'm here on behalf of Giornate Degli Autori, historical partner, as you can see, of the Miu Miu Women's Tales, and thanks to Miu Miu especially, to trust in us. Here, Venice is a fantastic place, but Venice is just a platform to underline, to push, to thank the creativity of women in the audiovisual and the cultural world. I have, when we start, the role of males is just to thank. So I have to thank especially the Regione Veneto and the Veneto Film Commission, Jacopo Chessa especially, because they are our hosts today. I have to thank personally Penny Martin, because she's a guide, she's a spotlight in our conversations. And I have to thank Miu Miu because especially Verde Visconti and Max Brun, the producer of all the films, because when we started together talking with my Miuccia Prada about this project, the idea was, yes, of course, we have to promote the women culture through films, through the capacity and the creativity of artists. But even if we are in a film festival, we don't need just to screen things. We need to have a moment in which we can discuss, we can discover, we can confrontate each other, and we can have new ideas, new concepts for the future. This is the reason why we have the conversations. And even if this one is a very tough year for many, many reasons, very good reasons, by the way, I'm really, really proud that we have the conversations. This morning, we were in the theater screening films. Today and tomorrow, we're here to meet each other. And this is the most important thing in the end. Thank you so much. Penny.
Thank you, Giorgio, as always, and welcome to all of you on a Sunday afternoon to the only 100% women-directed strand of the Venice Film Festival. I'm, of course, referring to the Miu Miu Women's Tales, which is, you will know, a sequence of short films commissioned biannually by the Italian fashion house Miu Miu. There are now 26 of those films by film directors such as Eva DuVernay and Małgorzata Szumowska, both of whom have films in competition in Venice here this year. And the latest short, as we heard, by Antoneta Alamat Kusijanović, premiered here at the Venice Film Festival this morning, only 4 hours ago, which means that for 13 years, Miu Miu has been leading from the front in this arena of female-centered filmmaking. Equal opportunities, equal pay, decent working standards are what we talk about on these panels every year. So, of course, we are very passionate that this current dispute reaches a positive end that benefits everybody working in this industry. Before I introduce Antoneta and the star of the 26th Miu Miu Women's Tale, which is happening behind us, I think. You'll be getting amazing excerpts of it. Danita Churchich, you're going to have to help me with my pronunciations. This Scottish voice has been practicing all week. And we're going to get down to discussing their work as well as some issues for women both in front and behind the camera. I should say to you that we're going to speak for roughly 40 minutes, after which, 30-40 minutes in this hot room, after which there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions if you would like. So if you can store them up until then, that would be fantastic. Well, I am thrilled to be introducing Antoneta Alamat Kusijanović, the Croatian writer, director and producer, and the recipient of the Camera d'Or in Cannes in 2021 for her first feature, her debut feature, Marina. Those of you who haven't seen it, or indeed the 2017 short from which it was developed, Into the Blue, which also won a special mention at the Berlin International Film Festival that year. Antoneta's films are characterized by a hugely passionate take on the perennial subjects, which include family, parental and patriarchal control, marital sacrifice, and female resistance to all of those things. And they're expressed using a visual language that is highly technically complex to realize, but when watching it, really intuitive and transporting, all of which, of course, we will talk with regards to her Women's Tales short, Stana. But it's also our great pleasure to be joined by the actor Danita Kurcic, born in Belgrade, but raised in Copenhagen. Danita, that's it. Studied at what's now called the Danish School of Performing Arts before joining the ensemble of the Royal Danish Theatre. In addition to this extensive stage career, she's won plaudits for playing Juliet and Joan of Arc. Danita's got a huge career in Danish TV and film. Among roles that we know for The Bridge and Wallander and Lars von Trier's Kingdom Exodus, she won a Shooting Star for her part in On the Edge, and last year she won Best Actress at the Danish Film Awards for her series The Chestnut Man. Stana is the second project which she's worked with Aneta on, starring as Nela, the mother of the rebellious Julia in Marina, which was executive produced by Martin Scorsese, no less. So one of the things that I loved in your clips, Danita, was that you've said that one of the things that you love about acting is the ability to step in and then step out. So we're going to try and keep you here for 40 minutes and hear about the opportunities that that's affording her now. But first, please help me welcome Danita and Antoneta to the Miu Miu Women's Tales stage. So let's begin with the beginning and the origins of Stana, which of course are the brief. All directors are given the very same brief by Mrs. Prada, which is to create a short film using the latest Miu Miu women's wear collection. And, you know, there are 26 extremely different outcomes in these publications, which you're all welcome to pick up afterwards. Very different forms happen. Can you tell me a little bit about the invitation to make a Miu Miu Women's Tale, how it arrived, and what you thought about this provocation, which is, I guess, to sort of respond to the idea of femininity itself? It's quite a big question.
Well, I think they didn't invite me, I manifested them. Really, it was 2 years before I ever got an invite. I was writing a story hoping someone calls me, but it wasn't Stana. It's a story that might never be made, but I in my head during COVID, I was envisioning that this can be one day Miu Miu short. And then 2 years later, as with all manifestations that we really want very strongly, I received a call from Gaia and from Verda and Max, and we watched a show on March 8th, I think. I was really thrilled.
So that would be the autumn-winter fashion show, you
yes,
mean?
yes.
With the clothes, the sort of
yes.
the material to work with.
Yes, I was really. First, I was so happy, you know, and it's really rare moments that you can sink into it and be happy. And then I was scared. So, yeah, there's a story of Stana that has been. Let me go one step back. I'm really grateful to be invited.
Sure, it's a good.
But it's not like, you know, people always say at the stage, I'm so grateful, but I'm truly grateful. I was so moved today, you know. I was sitting in that row next to this incredible women. I was touched by that, really. I felt, okay, the best is yet to come. That was the feeling. And that's why it's so important to be invited in a group like this, because it does give you elan. It gives you power to move, to go forward. So come back to the story. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, it was not easy to, you know, say yes to something you wanted for so long. It is there's a certain anticipation of yourself and of others. So it took a little bit of time to understand how ready I am to tell this completely new story with Mio Mio Women Tales. And my great-great-great-grandmother, who died when I was 1 month old. I had 3 great-grandmothers that I knew till I was 20. But this one I never met. Her name was Stana. So with this film, and they always say, oh, you look like old Stana. So with this film, I wanted to honor Stana. She does not look like me at all, but much more beautiful. And Stana had a really difficult life. She was resilient and living in a culture where you can be easily tricked into having some power and then have a very cold wake up. And when I saw the collection, that's what was triggered. The collection felt so masculine. It felt like an armor, the layers that were peeling in, and then comes this sensuality and provocation from underneath in the sheer and lascive. And I felt, okay, this is something that we need to, we have to have this arc where a woman is needing to wear an armor and then can shut it off and take her power.
It's interesting that you say it's a different discrete project from your previous film, because there is some continuity as well, isn't there? I know that in Marina you were looking at a kind of very resilient young woman, a 17-year-old, and it's channeled through her. And interestingly that you use the word armor. I always think that swimsuit is almost like a kind of armature. Almost the cinematography almost makes it look like metallic, like an armor. But this is a kind of much more mature woman. We've almost got Stana with us. I'm about to ask you a little bit about her, if you can conjure her into the room for us. But it's a different point in the feminine kind of lifetime and the kind of the provocation of what's happened to her. She's about to inherit, for those of you that haven't seen the film, the family business, and she's being asked to step up and be adult when maybe the adults aren't being very adult around her.
You ask me so many questions.
That's too many questions in one.
I will do one by one,
okay.
But they are all compelling.
Do it.
First, we can never escape ourselves. You know, we can pick another material and another character and another setting, and my next movie might be in Mexico or in New York. You always are in the movie, but no matter how much you don't want it or do. So that's just, yes, there's always a thread, and others see it when you don't. But in terms of bringing Danita in the room, when we were making Stana, and we are 2 women with a very different upbringing, you know, Danish and Croatian, Danita really combated on Murina, the characters. Like, I'm gonna let you tell the story, but there was a more that she needed to character to express, to release, to show the power, where I felt that the power is evident in the silence, It was just a different type of language of a women from the way they're differently raised.
And here we're talking about Morina.
Morina.
Yeah.
And then I felt like our collaboration was absolutely amazing on Morina, and I felt that I need to give her this other woman now. So the dialogue was never, you know, we had so much more to say to each other, and this is somehow the other angle of the same woman that I wanted Danita to impersonate.
So why don't you tell us almost what your brief was, Danita, from Antoneta? We in the film, Stana has a dilemma, doesn't she? And it's very subtly, you have to really, it will maybe only 2 or 3 times I watched the film until I started to realize exactly what had happened to Stana. And I wonder what you decided that was, how it was told to you by Antoneta, and then what you did with your performance to, you know, what injustice has been committed, do you think? What did you decide?
You mean through the character, through Stana?
Well, what's happened to Stana that she's
Well,
so
I think she's, you know, she's
silenced
worked
and angry
through her whole life to get to this moment. This is basically, you know, her big moment of that she's worked her whole life for. She was probably was supposed to be a son, but became a daughter and had to, you know, really work, I think, extra hard to really show that that she earns her position. And this evening, where the whole movie is about, is the evening of taking over
succession.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But at the same time, you know, she realizes that her whole family has been deceiving her. She realizes it in the same night. So it's a very hard dilemma. Should she stay and you know, and go with the line she's wanted from the beginning, or does she leave everything behind? Yeah.
What did you decide?
Well, it's kind of like, I feel that, now I'm just gonna say about the ending, but the ending is really showing that her son, her young son, she has this awakening at the end where she sees, she kind of wakes up in her crazy dance, revolt dance. She sees her son looking at her and is kind of mirroring her anger, yeah, her aggressivity that she's pushing out. And I think that kind of, yeah, it kind of wakes her up, and I think she realizes at that point that, okay, he's with me. The one person in the room and the one person closest to me that I can actually trust.
At the Venice Film Festival, you know, I think sometimes we make assumptions that themes like patriarchal control or female resilience are topics on which we all agree, and it's kind of like, yeah, on to the next thing. But I was really struck by a lot of the interviews that you did around the time of Marina, where you said that when you took it to your home audience, you found that many audience members quite confused about what was so bad for this poor girl, and what, you know, it seemed as if her home life was perfectly normal, and this idea that they couldn't really register what the plot line was, they couldn't see what the injustice was, and it really struck me that, you know, sometimes we just assume that we all have the same privileges and we all have the same understanding of where we are in the progressive feminism. So I wondered what you thought your home audience might think of Stana. And, you know, I wonder whether that's partly an agenda of yours, where you feel like, you know, it's not over until everybody, everywhere, understands what's dreadful for a woman who's silenced by her family, or, you know.
Yesterday, and this is an answer to your question. It's just going to take a little roundabout.
You do that.
Yesterday, my first interview at Giornate degli Autori garden, I started to cry. I couldn't speak. I was asked a question that was very simple. It was about, what do you think about three generations of men, the father, husband, and the son, and what are these points of view? And to answer your question, and to answer that question, we can only hope. So I'm not left to fight in any other way except telling stories and hope that I change my son. Because the change is not really only on men. The change is also on women that are raising men. And that's also something that I wanted to tackle in Stana as well, because we are looking at a different generation of women. So everybody needs to be invited to that change. And to be not so harsh on my own background and country, I don't think it's only the Balkans to be, yeah. Because after the journey with Morina, I have started noticing that pattern. It just is named and branded differently.
Briefly, while we're still on Morina, there are strong links on the Miu Miu Women's Tales project to the DOP that you worked with on Morina, Hélène Louvrar, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes. Hélène Louvrar.
Not only did she work on the 10th Women's Tale, Les Trois Boutons, with Agnès Varda.
Oh, yes.
She also worked on the 9th with Lice Rohrwacher. And I think also with this year's panelists, we're going to be back here tomorrow talking to the new Miu Miu Women's Tales Committee with Maggie Gyllenhaal, amongst others. And she worked, of course, with Hélène on her directorial debut last year, The Lost Daughter. Can you just tell us a little bit about what it is that brings everybody to work with Hélène and what that was like?
Hélène brings everybody. She is just... she's an incredible supporter of women. You know, that these women that really wholeheartedly support other women, that's Hélène Louvrar. Well, and in terms of how she does it in practice, she really is in love with actors. She really wants to understand what is the story the director wants to tell. She's not combating it. She wants to understand the genesis of it. And then once on set and in pre-production as well, she listens to the way the story needs to be told. And all this scene sounds very simple, but it's quite complicated. And on top of it, she says, no, no, no. C'est simple, Antoneta. C'est très simple. On va faire comme ça. And she makes it really simple. But behind the simplicity are very complex ideas. And the time is put into developing them, into preparing them, into executing them prior to set. And once you're on set, one can dance with actors. One can truly dive into performances because of all of this other is light under the hand of Hélène Louvrar.
Well, I mentioned how kind of iconic she made that swimsuit. You know, it really is almost like a character itself. I'm interested in the yellow dress. What sort of symbolic import did you think that had? It's become incredibly iconic in the imaging of the Stana film, and they've used it across all the publicity material. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of selection and then what you chose to do with it?
Sure. I mean, it's a great contrast to this whole construction. You know, we start in the construction world. You know, it's very light. It has the lightness. It's closed completely. So it kind of fit well with it's very feminine. It's very light. So it was a good kind of contrast to this very. Very dramatic evening that
I'll jump in. I will jump in because we both want to actually cheer for Amela Bakšić, who's a costume designer who worked with both of us on Morina and now on Stana. And when she picked the dress and Danita sent me the photo, and I said, wow, this is a first communion.
Well, that dress has a big night, it's true. I gather that you trained in physical theatre. Was there choreography, or did the two of you work that out? I mean, it's an amazing performance when it really kicks off.
We went with the flow many times, and Antoneta is, she does not stop. She does not stop. It's go again, and it was a one take. The whole from entering with the speech and up to the exit of this room was actually one take. So we did that.
12 times.
12 times, yeah, which felt like, yeah.
Wow.
Now I remember Danita said that also Danita was with a baby on set, breastfeeding, and she said, okay, 11th, I'm just like, this is it, I really have nothing, I can't anymore, we have to stop. And I said, no, this is the take, this is when you're gonna give everything, and it was. That's the take in a film.
Goodness, but of course the first time we see you, as you said, you're in a hazmat suit on site. For me that feels a very Antoneta contrast, that kind of idea of calling attention to the sort of visceral, technical aspects. I read in some of your clips that you'd kind of come across reviews and interviewers saying that presumably they thought it was a compliment that Marina hadn't looked like it was directed by a woman. But is that your shorthand for transporting us out of a kind of domestic environment into the professional world?
I think that when you're talking about spaces and costume together, it's all architecture, and architecture and costume together define character movement and sometimes also emotion, and certain development and dilemmas and emotions could never happen unless they are set in a right space for them. So with Stana, first seeing the collection with the armor, we started with almost an underbelly of this very masculine world, and as we are climbing up to what I say communion in a building of the new church and the air, and then to lift off even that armor, because that's just some another type of a costume that a character needs to survive. That was kind of the journey. We were thinking of spaces and how are we shedding the layers, yes, the skin. Somehow like in Morena,
Well, I'm just thinking of the fact that you used the word under. You spent so much time on Marina.
Underwater, and here under the ground.
Yeah. I
That's
saw
true.
an amazing interview where you're talking with James Cameron about the technicalities of shooting underwater. And actually the way that you were talking about it was you deliberately chose a subject that frightened you. Like you pushed yourself kind of down a hole into the thing that was most scary for you. What were you in pursuit of? Why do you want to...
To be on the edge of my seat with something I'm working, I need to actually be at the edge of my seat in my life about it. So, now as a mother and wife, such a strange word, wife, yes, as a mother and wife, of course I have my fears. The conflicts that one has with not the honeymoon phase, but the life ahead. And I think that probably the betrayal of a lover that comes in the same day as the peak of your work is some of the subconscious fears. Now very conscious because it's there and everybody reminded me of it. But yeah.
In profile interviews of you, some journalists put that kind of information conveniently or kind of locally close to biographical information. So often, they'll cite your family's experience fleeing Croatia in 1991, and also an absolutely horrible incident where you witnessed a landmine explosion.
See, that's not true, because we never left Croatia.
Oh, really? Well,
Yes,
well,
it's all wrong. Everybody was
put it
there.
on record then. Now you've got a chance. Then.
Yeah, no, it is. First of all, the war and the misfortune that happened in Balkans, all of them, is not something that is necessarily needs to be used in marketing your own work.
Yes. Yeah.
So I really never talk about it. It was really taken out of context of me speaking of what is the urgency of making films. The urgency is facing death and being aware of it. So the awareness of death, that it's behind you, front of you, and each side, does give you the urge to live fully and to truly exuberate. Because there is no bigger sin than to die unexplored and without honoring life. So as I was speaking of life, I mentioned death, and it was so swirled in a wrong direction. But yeah, my whole family lives in Dubrovnik, and I also live between Dubrovnik and New York. And,
Well, good to put that on record.
Yes.
Before it's in every interview for the rest of your career.
Yes, no, it was in every, once it was published, it was in every interview in Croatia, and it was very difficult because the incident that I witnessed was pulled out and the real people lived behind it and died. So it is really unfortunate to use, situations like that to selling the clicks, but it happens sometimes by accident, sometimes not.
Thank you, Antoneta. Your family left Serbia when you were a baby in the 1980s. I gather your name means from Denmark.
Yes.
Is this just a happy accident?
Yes, it is a happy accident.
But how much
It
are
was
you from Denmark? How much are you the product of the kind of cultural...
well, growing up there, for sure, yeah. So I always feel very Danish when I'm in the Balkans and the Serbian comes up in me in Denmark. So it's always that nice contrast.
And the story we're always told, well, at least in the UK, and I'm not sure if this is understood sort of in the rest of Europe, was that the reason that we are so fascinated with this phenomenon that happened in Danish on-screen culture was that there was, well, this is the story we were told in Britain, that there was a sort of decision made to focus the investment into drama specifically, like 20 years ago. And for that reason, the amazing kind of crime genre really burgeoned during that time. Is that correct? And how much do you feel that the film industry is burgeoning similarly, or would you say that it's mainly television? Give us a kind of picture. We rarely get an opportunity to hear about the kind of the Danish scene here. It's always about America.
Ask about that.
Still, you're the product of a very successful...
Yes, for sure. I mean, no, I mean, I can only talk about my own...
Oh, do.
My own being lucky to kind of, in general, have my education growing up in Denmark and having the opportunities I've had. I'm extremely grateful for. And yeah, we've had a very strong, a long time, but of course with the Dogma movement, there's been a total uprising of these very raw, honest, very kind of realistic also way of acting that really has had an echo in the rest of the world. And yeah, the crime, the whole Danish noir has really has been extremely popular, and yeah.
And it's created opportunities, surely.
Definitely,
Yeah.
For me, definitely, yeah.
This is, I think, my 10th year of doing these conversations, and I can hand on heart say, this is the first time that one of the films has made me cry. And twice, I've seen it twice in full, and it really provoked, especially the moment when I presume the character of the son chimes in, and the mother and the son moment is quite moving. Certainly I found. Tell us about the boy. Where did you find him? And
it was our casting director who recommended that boy, Tim Kagrin.
That's his name, sorry.
No, that's the name of the casting director, and his name is Tom Rushiadat. And his both parents are actors and singer. And I think and I actually feel with it because growing up in theater and around actors, there's an empathy that is developed, and he's very young, he's 10, but he is so understanding of human dynamics and incredibly empathic, and holds a very strong power that it's both like embracing and violent in a very strange way. And when I met him, we cried together it seems like I'm crying all the time. I'm not. But we did cry together on our casting, and I knew that's the boy. And he was too old. You know, at 10, almost 11, he was too old. And I always felt like, you know, the child that it's almost understanding too much is not going to be able to trigger the same type of emotion. You cry when you see a child of 4, 5, 6, 7. 10 is already a little bit older. But then we realized that it's great, actually, that he does not belong. So all the other girls and kids around him, they're like 1 to 2 heads shorter and small, and that created another layer in a story. He was absolutely fabulous to work with. We had one rehearsal that I recorded, entire rehearsal with Danita. They were dancing. I asked them to dance and to communicate all their problems and love through dance. And I was anticipating that it is gonna need to open him up. But he really surprised us. You remember this? Do you want to say something on it?
No, it was just surprising and beautiful to see how receptive, how open he was, how he led and took kind of the lead through the whole thing, and was in the same time a child, but also suddenly a grown man. And it was beautiful.
But it's a sort of new revelation, I think, in terms of the Women's Tales series, just that idea. It's a very special age, that 10, 11, 12, in terms of understanding what is expected of you growing up as a man, I think, in terms of your mother, and just to add that to the kind of spectrum of relationships that a woman has to kind of negotiate, I think is really interesting.
I was lucky
what kind of
that
role
he was
model
older.
she really, in that awakening at the end, I think it's also really a confrontation with herself and what kind of role model am I supposed to be, and whose dream am I really living. And for who am I doing all this? Is it to prove something to my father? Is it really the best for my son? Like, what kind of role model do I want to be?
What kind of man do I want him to grow up to be?
And that's why I think it's really important that he is this age of just jumping into being a little man. You know,
that's the words.
It was a good serendipity that it happened that way.
I wrote my notes before I met you. And I was going to say, I'm really struck by the use of your music in your films, but I now realize in all of your life, you don't stop singing, you're always rousing everybody else into music. Is this a cultural thing? Is this an Antoneta thing?
No, it's, you know who loves to sing? People who can't sing, and that's me. That's why I love to sing, and I make movies about the things I'm afraid of. And I love to surround myself with people who have a good ear and a good rhythm. I think that is the beat and the heart of the film.
Danita, so you're the communicator on the panel. Is there something that music and song in on-screen media can do that words can't?
Yeah, definitely. And movement that words can never say. And definitely.
We've touched a little on collaborators. We've actually already sketched out a good few. You've had a writing partnership both on Marina with Frank Graziano and now on Stana with Ivor Martinic, who is in the audience, I think.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that process for you and what you get out of it?
You know, it's like playing tennis alone without co-writer. You really need a partner. The best ideas from me happen when I can confront them with someone who is both incredibly talented as Ivor, but also incredibly generous and empathic. It takes so much empathy and hard work to write a script. And yes, we've been working together for some time, and we are now continuing on to next project.
Really?
Yes, yeah, we work together real time. So do you want to know how we work?
Sure.
He makes his coffee in Barcelona, I make mine in New York. And then we turn on the Skype, we look at each other. On one side of the screen, and on another side of the screen we have a final draft shared document. And then I can see him typing while watching his face, and vice versa. First we start with telling all the frustrating things about that morning, and then we attack and push it onto the paper. Then we revise it next day, we hate it, and then we go back.
And how long can you go on doing that? That's quite intense.
Long, very long.
Really?
Yeah, because it's being together. That's the whole point. You cannot do it long time alone, but long time together, it's a joy, it's a game exploration.
Thank you for sharing that. Nobody ever tells you how they do it. Danita, as well as Antoneta, you've worked with another female director multiple times, Birgitta Starmosa, on Camino this year, and previously on Darling. Does that kind of deeper working relationship make it easier? Always?
Definitely these two collaborations, definitely. It's a gift, I think, to have built up trust and built up a creative language together. I think that's really a gift.
And literally why? Because you can
because
just
you
go
know
straight.
the first time you're like you don't know each other. You build up, you learn what each other's in good and bad, like what triggers, what how you push each other to
how
do the
far?
best.
How
How far
far?
we can go. How far we can go, yes, definitely.
Well,
But also, just coming on of that subject, I imagine, I'm not an actress, but I imagine reading the script for Stana, it can be really scary to go and jump on a table, because you never know how it's going to look, really. We know that scripts read one way and they can turn out different way. And I imagine that not having made one film together before, that we tested each other and embraced each other, that it would have been not the same to make Stana right now. Because Danita had a full trust.
And we had very short time.
And we shot this in a very short time and with a very short rehearsal, which I am not a big fan of short rehearsals. But we rehearsed the film in 2 days. And it takes courage to know that you might be judged and that maybe the film or director might not bridge the gap where one from being judged steps into the other's shoes. And that was a risk. And Danita gave me trust, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
You too.
Well, every year we need to talk about the relatively low numbers of women working behind the camera, and helpfully for me, when I'm preparing this, the Center for Study of Women in Television and Film at San Diego State University compiles all the numbers from every single angle, and I can confirm after historic highs in 2020, the percentage of women working as directors has declined. Of the top 250 US films in 2022, the number of female directors is 18%, which is only up 1% from the previous year, and that's 11% of the top 100, which is down 1%. So, Antoneta, in the time that you've been working, do you sense any progress in getting your and your female peers' projects made?
This is a very complicated and charged subject,
Oh, we know.
always. And you always feel like you're walking on eggshells, whatever you say. So I'm going to take my time.
Yeah.
It is very odd feeling when you premiere the movie at a big festival and win an award, and it is marketed like, of course, it's time for women, so we gave this award to women. And then people somehow slightly not talk about film in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Because the film won an award
Mm-hmm.
because of the way the film is.
Yeah.
But sometimes people like to think that it's because it's time for women and the awards need to be given to women.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit difficult. So what I think is that where the things absolutely need to change every time, and we need to hold our walls and confront anew all the time, is at financing. That's where we need to change. It's not so much of the quotas of festival, it's more of quotas of who is choosing the films, to have equality at that level, to have equality of level of financing films. Once there's enough films made, and once the women are continuously having a chance to make films, they don't need a quota to be at a festival. We are going to make amazing films. We are making amazing films. So it is definitely the time where certain disbalance needs to be helped. But then it comes at expense of, once you win, that it's told that it's because you're a woman, but it's actually because you're a director and you made a good film.
Yeah, very frustrating subject. And of course, who is it that's on the panels talking about it? Not the decisions of the billionaire men that actually run the financing, but the women.
Thank God there are billionaire women too.
Well, sure. I'm interested, though, on top of this financing, what else can be done beyond quotas, which we know that, Venice has never managed to attain the quota that it set up in 2018. Ava DuVernay is going to be on the Miu Miu Women's Tales committee panel tomorrow here in this room at 11 o'clock. And you may know that she's going about that in a very proactive way, in addition to having a film in competition, so competing in the mainstream, not just in a genre as such, with this hiring network that promotes gender parity, diversity and inclusion, and also operates a kind of informal culture of mentoring, which I'll ask her a little bit about. I'm interested to know, is that also useful? Are there other women that step in and advise you? Have you, either of you,
That's incredibly important.
Tell us how that works, because...
But for example, once you are given opportunity to make a film, which does not come so often, it is important that you think twice who's your team. For me, it was very important that the team around Stana and Morena in the heads of departments are women that I admired. That does not mean that there's not amazing men I admire, like Ivor and Luciano and Ivan. But also, certain movies require a certain look, certain perspective. That's what I wanted to say. And that's when the woman, that's when it's important to work with your peers, with women that support you, the women that cheer for the movies.
Yeah, as Stana
It's when you are in power.
Yeah, and Stana says in your film, I didn't learn by looking, I learned by doing. And is that where it is learned, on set? Are there other women that you notice particularly, or perhaps you've worked with, who you find yourself thinking, oh, what would so-and-so do? Do you have a kind of imaginary board in your head a little bit about the kind of women's examples that you call upon?
Well, I definitely have my board of friends that I use in every form, both privately and professionally, definitely.
doing then, once given the opportunity with the financing, of course. So 2 final questions, because I realise I've actually eaten into your 20 minutes question time. Sorry, audience. Firstly, will you get any chance to see anything at the festival? And even if not literally, what are you looking forward to that's actually part of the programme this year? Have you?
We've been discussing this.
Have you?
We really wanted to see Emma Stone in Poor Things, but it was before we arrived, so...
Yeah,
Maybe someone
it's
will send
very...
you a screener.
What's that?
Maybe someone will send you a screener.
Yes, I really hope. And it seems that the whole industry is supporting her so much with this great article. What is it? Oscar 2024. First Emma Stone, second Emma Stone, third place Emma Stone. I don't know if you ever saw that, but it felt very strong. But also, I would love to see Ava's film. Yeah. It's also happening after we leave.
Origin is Wednesday night, is that right?
Yes, on the 8th.
And then, before we turn over to questions, why don't we take this opportunity for a little bit of consultancy? Who do you think, which woman director do you think should direct the next Miu Miu Woman's Tale?
Go first. One. Well, I was lucky to be a part of the jury in Sarajevo Film Festival this year. And I had the amazing opportunity to see a young Georgian director called Lena Naveriani, who did just a extraordinary film called Blackbird, Blackbird, Blackberry, which was a female lead, a story about a very strong story about female liberation in all its senses, with such a incredible performance and lead character that I would be really interested in seeing.
Great tip. Thank you.
I have a colleague with whom I studied at Columbia. She's from Chile, and she made a wonderful movie this year that's right now touring US. And her name is Francisca Alegria. I think she would be a great pick for Miu Miu Women Tales.
Fantastic, thanks for sharing. I want to make sure before we close then that you all know where you actually can see the films that we've been discussing by directors such as Hayam Abbas, who's got a film, we've just left the auditorium, Haifa Al-Mansour, Alice Rohrbacher, Lucrezia Martel, and Antoneta. They can all be viewed at miumiu.com, of course. As I've said, I'll be back here at 11 tomorrow morning for conversation number 2, which will be with the new Miu Miu Women's Tales Committee, which comprises Eva DuVernay, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Catherine Martin. But for now, it just remains for all of us to thank the excellent director and wonderful star of Miu Miu Women's Tales number 26, Antoneta Alamat Kusijanović and Danita Kurcic. Thank you.